Did you know that Sony almost produced a fourth Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie instead of The Amazing Spider-Man? Today, I'm gonna open up the super secret case file and tell you all about it in a little segment I like to call Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm ERod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and welcome to Legends of Fandom, where I discuss fanboy films and shows that almost happened. Today, by your request, I'm going to tell you all about the Spider-Man movie that we were supposed to get instead of The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, just for the sake of context, let me take you back all the way to the beginning of the comic book movie boom. In the early 2000s, movies like Blade and X-Men made Hollywood take notice of the value of comic book-based properties. But in spite of their success, neither of those films managed to gross that big blockbuster Star Wars money. In fact, at the time, the highest grossing comic book movie of all time was still Tim Burton's Batman. May I remind you that that movie came out in 1989, so Batman was the highest grossing comic book movie for 13 years. But all that changed in 2002 with the release of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Quickly breaking almost every box office record that existed at the time, Raimi's Spider-Man was the final spark that jump-started the now ever-present and dominating comic book movie genre. And for about 5 years, no other comic book movie could top it, until The Dark Knight came around. So yeah, eventually, Batman got his revenge. But that doesn't change the fact that this was the most successful film franchise Sony has ever had, with Spider-Man 3 being the most profitable installment in the franchise. Yeah, this is the Spider-Man movie that has made the most money. This one. Now by the time you see this video, there is a high probability that Spider-Man Homecoming has surpassed it. But as I am recording this is the highest grossing Spider-Man movie of all time. Yeah, soak it in. So even though Spider-Man 3 was torn to shreds by the critics, Sony still wanted to move forward with Spider-Man 4. You know, because of all the money that this made. However, Sam Raimi didn't want to rush into Part 4, as he was immensely disappointed with Part 3, something that he attributed to studio meddling, as Spider-Man 3 was nowhere close to the movie that Sam Raimi intended to make, as he originally wanted to make a literal battle of the ages, as we would have seen the young, inexperienced, and gullible Peter Parker go up against the much older, seasoned, and more ruthless Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture. This sounds familiar for some reason. And Raimi's top choice to play the Vulture in Spider-Man 3 would have been Sir Ben Kingsley.
I never thought people had been hurt. They lied to me.
This is the Mandarin?
I know, it's embarrassing.
FYI, Kingsley was also my top choice to play the Vulture in the Spider-Man villains casting couch that I did way back in the day. But for convoluted studio reasons, the Vulture was changed to the Sandman, which Raimi was okay with because he likes that character just as much. While Raimi intended to finish Harry Osborn's arc in Part 3, he had no intention of turning him into another Goblin, as he felt that would have been repetitive. But that decision was made for him, so he got stuck with 2 villains instead of 1. And then, producer ERod said, hey, why not add a 3rd villain? How about Venom? He sells them toys. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Ooh, my spider sense is tingling. If you know what I'm talking about.
Interesting fact, Sam Raimi is not a fan of Venom, as he feels the character lacks the humanity to make him relatable, and ultimately, he's just an angry monster. Suffice it to say, Sam Raimi didn't want to make the same mistakes that he made with Part 3, so he was firm on his stance that he wouldn't move forward with Spider-Man 4 until a good shooting script had been finished. In spite of this, Sony still scheduled Spider-Man 4 to be released on May 4th, 2011, even though Sam Raimi hadn't officially signed on to direct. And why did they do this? Because if Sony doesn't produce one Spider-Man movie within a few years, they lose the rights of Spider-Man and they revert back to Marvel. And with Spider-Man being their most profitable franchise, they weren't gonna let that happen. Now, I would like to point out the irony of them collaborating with Marvel and allowing them to use Spider-Man after they fought so hard to keep Spider-Man away from them. So basically, what began to transpire at this point was a game of chicken between Sam Raimi and Sony Pictures, with Sam Raimi refusing to sign on to direct the movie before a good script was finished, and Sony threatening to pull the trigger on a reboot. Now, A game of chicken only has one of two inevitable conclusions. Either one car will veer out of the way and let the other one keep speeding by, or they will crash into one another into a mound of blood, guts, fire, and twisted metal. Now we'll come back to this gruesome metaphor in a moment. Right now, I want to take you into an alternate reality in which they did make Spider-Man 4, so I can share with you what this elusive movie would have been about. Now, like I said, Sam Raimi wasn't satisfied with any of the scripts that were finished, so we have no clue what the actual plotline of Spider-Man 4 would have been. But thanks to some storyboards by Jeffrey Henderson, we are aware of a few sequences that Sam was working on that are more likely to have made it into the movie. And these storyboarded sequences include what could have been the greatest opening to any Spider-Man movie ever made. Now, it's no secret that one of Sam Raimi's main issues with Spider-Man 3 was that he was forced to include too many villains. We all know that Sam Raimi prefers to tell stories with just one villain at a time. This is evident in the fact that the first two Spider-Man movies only had one villain. Hell, originally, Sony wanted the first Spider-Man movie to have both Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus, but Sam Raimi and a few members of the production team convinced them to save Doc Ock for a future movie by emphasizing how costly the special effects would be with both villains in one movie. And so, Sam planned to open Spider-Man 4 with a sequence mocking the idea of having multiple supervillains in one movie. So according to Sam Raimi and Henderson's storyboards, Spider-Man 4 would have started with a montage of Spider-Man fighting and easily defeating multiple D-list villains that never would have been used as the main antagonist in any of the movies, such as the Rhino, the Shocker, Mysterio, and the Prowler? The Prowler's more like a Z-list villain. Anyway, the montage would have concluded with Spider-Man dragging Mysterio to jail, only to receive a round of applause from the NYPD, who would have taken the villain away as he struggled to get free, only to have his trademark fishbowl fall off his head, to reveal that Mysterio is none other than Bruce Campbell. Hail to the king, baby. Hey, that's another one of my choices for my Spidey Villains casting couch. The reason this is so meaningful is because it would have finally answered a fan theory that has been around since Spider-Man 2, which is that the reason we see Bruce Campbell continuously appear in all the movies in different roles is because he's actually Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio in disguise.
Demitas Spider-Man?
So, if all the villains in the opening montage were part of just an elaborate joke at the expense of the studio, who would have been Spider-Man's main antagonist in Spider-Man 4? Well, if Raimi would have had things go his way, Vulture would have been the main villain, as he initially intended for Spider-Man 3. But the only difference would have been that at this point in 2008, when the movie was in pre-production, Ben Kingsley was sadly unavailable. So they were going to go with Sam Raimi's second choice, John Malkovich, who was slated to play Adrian Toomes as an old inventor who is forced to retire due to his age, and then goes on a rampage with his very impressive new flight technology to get revenge and prove that he is not obsolete. There are a few of Henderson's storyboards showing Spidey and Vulture engaging in a mid-air fight scene in downtown New York, which would have ended with Vulture cutting chunks out of the surrounding buildings and forcing Spider-Man to give up the fight in order to save the bystanders below from the falling debris, therefore allowing Vulture to escape. But other than that, little else is known about the plot of Spider-Man 4, except for a possible romantic subplot. Apparently, Sam Raimi planned to throw yet another monkey wrench into Spider-Man's love life by creating a love triangle between Mary Jane, Peter, and the newly introduced Felicia Hardy, who would have been played by Anne Hathaway. Wait, Anne Hathaway playing Felicia Hardy? Why does that feel so familiar? Anyway, in a shocking twist, it would have turned out that Felicia Hardy was actually the daughter of the Vulture, Spider-Man's latest foe. That also sounds familiar. Wait, did Sony recycle somebody else's idea from an unmade movie for their latest multi-million-dollar film? Nah, that would be shameful and embarrassing. So in the end, Felicia would have rebelled against her father and helped Spider-Man defeat the Vulture by assuming her beloved anti-hero alter ego, the Vulturess. I'm not kidding! Instead of becoming the Black Cat, Felicia Hardy was supposed to turn into a made-up character called the Vulturess. Yeah, complaints about other comic book movies seem kinda petty right about now.
I never thought people had been hurt, They lied to me.
Now, I don't want to believe for a moment that the Vulturist was Sam Raimi's idea, as he is such a hardcore Spider-Man fan, and this is too huge of a change for any Spidey purist to tolerate. But if it was his idea... Shame on you. Now, even though the production was lacking a cohesive shooting script, Sam Raimi was still very clear on what type of movie he wanted to make, and how he wanted to give Spidey a good send-off before he moved on to greener pastures. But it was at this time that Sony executives chimed in with a note requesting for Dylan Baker, who played Kirk Connors in the first 3 Spider-Man movies, to become the Lizard in Spider-Man 4, meaning that once again, a Spider-Man movie would feature multiple villains. And it was at this time that Sam Raimi had enough. And the metaphorical game of chicken ended with Sam Raimi swerving out of the way and letting Sony speed by with the Spider-Man franchise. Now, I wish there would be some really dramatic, elaborate conclusion to the story with Sam Raimi busting into the Sony offices, giving them the finger, and telling them to stick all their bad Spider-Man scripts where the sun don't shine. But their breakup was actually pretty civilized. Sam Raimi said, and I quote, "It really was the most amicable and undramatic of breakups. It was simply that we had a deadline and I couldn't get the story to work on a level that I wanted it to work. I was very unhappy with Spider-Man 3, and I wanted to make Spider-Man 4 to end on a very high note, the best Spider-Man of them all, but I couldn't get the script together in time, due to my own failings. And I said to Sony, I don't want to make a movie that is less than great. So I think we shouldn't make this picture. Go ahead with your reboot, which you've been planning anyway." And that was the end of Spider-Man 4. And thus, on May 6, 2011, there was no sign of Spider-Man in movie theaters. Instead, the #1 movie that weekend starred everybody's favorite super sexy long-haired Asgardian powerhouse, Loki!
Say my name! Say my name!
Man, that guy is popular. According to Sam Raimi's best friend and Evil Dead producer Robert Tapper, Sony announced the Spider-Man reboot within 24 hours of Sam Raimi dropping out of the project, and even had a script ready by Zodiac writer James Vanderbilt. Tapper says that Sony's actions sickened him, and that he considers them moving forward with Spider-Man without Sam Raimi to be one of Sony's biggest mistakes. And the proof is in the pudding, as Sam Raimi's movies were still more profitable than either of the 2 reboot movies. Thankfully, Spider-Man is back home now, and the future looks bright. And that is the story of Spider-Man 4, the unmade movie. Would you like to see me open up another super secret case file in the future? Let me know in the comment section below. Or better yet, give this video a thumbs up. The more thumbs up I get, the more inclined I will be to make more videos like this one in the future. Now, if you know of any other unmade fanboy films or shows, let me know at ERod@inbox.com so I can determine whether they are worthy of being a legend of fandom. Until next time, I'm ERod, and I'm the Blockbuster Buster.